Congratulations, you have made it to the end of the 7 principles. So now I want to examine what it looks like when we put all of this together. How does this work? And I'm actually going to do something a little bit different in this video and actually show you kind of my process using the principles as I might go through redesigning a slide with an example. And we're going to use this one here, our very typical looking slide. Now, right away, we see that there is a lot of information here that would be interfering with cognitive load, and too many things here are emphasized. We've got underline, we've got bold, right? We've got color, and our font here also looks a bit outdated. Overall, it's just a little bit boring and kind of average to look at, so we really want to spruce this up using our principles. So our first task really is always to start with the content and use less is more to break this down into more manageable size pieces for our students. I've already done the hard work to do that, and I've examined this content, and I believe that really all the things that are listed here can actually be distilled down into 2 bullet points. And so I'm going to, now that I've distilled them, take each of those and distribute them onto more slides. So I'm going to put each bullet point then on its own slide. Now, if I just even left with this and I stopped here, I've already done my students a huge favor by significantly reducing their cognitive load just doing that. So as I move on into more design principles, we're just going to keep getting better from here. All right, so the next thing I'm actually going to do is work with principles 4, 5, and 6. So remember, this is to use white space and create compositions, to be careful with emphasis, and to create relationships. And you might find yourself doing kind of all 3 of these things at one time, because often the things you choose to do in a design will affect all 3 of these principles. So for example, the first thing I actually am going to choose to do is change my font sizes so that it's clear that one of these pieces of information, in this case the term, is more significant than necessarily the definition. And this is going to help create my visual hierarchy, right? And that's all in principle number 5 on emphasis. So then I'm going to work with principle number 6, which is that I'm going to align the word and the definition. I'm going to make them pretty close together so that I have the proximity to relate the information. And then I'm also going to place these on the lower third to make my composition more interesting. So you see how I'm going through kind of these principles a little bit more organically maybe, but I'm still using them. So I've got now 5, 4, and 6 that I've used. And again, even if I left off here, I've really already made a huge difference in the design. So you can see how small changes, just even one principle, makes a big difference. But let's keep going. So I'm going to go on to principle number 3, and I'm going to change the font to something that looks a little bit more modern, and I'm going to add a little bit more emphasis by adding a little bit of color. So here I'm going to use this font, which is a great choice in PowerPoint. And then I'm going to use orange as my accent color. So here I've got white, black, and orange, my 60, 30, 10. Now, again, even if I stopped here, we have a huge improvement. And again, I just made very small changes of just the font and just adding a tiny bit of color. And so you can see, again, small changes make big impact. So finally, I want to add an image that I think will reinforce this term and help my students remember it. And that would be, again, principle number 7, use images. So I've already gone out and searched, and I selected an image of a broken window because I felt that would be relevant and help illustrate my point. And then I'm going to add that into the background. And here is a pro tip for you. I'm actually going to never just leave an image that I bring into my designs. I want to reposition it. I might want to resize it so that the image itself really works well and becomes a part of my composition. So in this case, for instance, I'm going to position this image and resize it a little bit so that the hole in the broken glass is right on top of that top right interest point from the rule of thirds. And that's really going to keep adding to my composition. All right, so now you'll actually see I have a little bit of an issue because my text has become a bit hard to see on this image. And this is something you kind of need to keep an eye out for when you're using images. And this is very easily fixed by adding some kind of shape or block behind the text so it stands out a little bit more. And so I'm just going to do that really quick, adding a white kind of sort of transparent block behind this. You could do this with, easily one of the colors you choose from your color scheme over an image. And that really helps to make the text easier to read, which is the paramount thing in this case. So here I am. I've used all 7 principles. This is my finished slide, I would say. So here's my before, and here's my after, using the 7 principles. So I hope that this kind of made it a little bit more clear to you about how you would use the 7 principles together. Like I mentioned, you might find yourself using, several of them at a time, or you might be not using them necessarily in the order that you learned them in, and that's okay. As you get better at design, it will come more naturally and more organically to you. And remember that the only way to get better at design is to practice and continuing to learn. And I'm really happy to be here and continue with you as you work on your course materials. I'm so excited that you got all the way here to the end of the course, and I hope that you will keep spreading the word about good design and its impact on students.